that might be one of the biggest misconceptions in marketing is that word sales funnel. What does it mean? What is it? How does it work? How would you describe a funnel and how does that play into the whole system of generating clients for you?
I think of it more as like this consumer journey. It's really about trying to understand how people are first looking for, whether it's you're talking about like quote unquote top of funnel. So they're doing research, and it's understanding what their need state are at these various stages of the quote unquote funnel. And so you have to have content and ad creative and tactics for each of these stages and start to understand where the consumer is in that buying journey. But so many people, and in my experience, they're focused on the top of the funnel or they're focused at the bottom of the funnel. But all of that in between, that's the part that they forget about, and nurturing people through that process, like that's the part that seems to be missing most of the time.
You hit on the head, and this is like advanced marketing at this point. Once you get through the middle stuff, a lot of people, when they run ads or do marketing, they're speaking in a different language than where their potential clients are. And I just saw this just a couple of days ago. It was one of my friends who I guess hired a marketing company, and their marketing company was just shooting these bottom of the funnel ads, showing reviews and testimonials. And I sent a screenshot to him like, hey, sorry to break the news to you. These ads are not going to work. Your marketing guy just doesn't get it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, trying to explain to him the different way to talk to people who don't know you versus when they know you. And then now when they know you, you need to start speaking to them differently. And then now when they're decision stage, you need to speak to them differently. And a lot of people kind of miss these small little nuances. And yeah, I'm sure you can attest, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, even a couple of years ago, this could have worked. And it was kind of like things that were easier back then. With Google, you just have to put up any ads. As long as you put up any ad, then it was good enough. As long as you were there, it was good enough. Then as long as you had some ad groups and ad sets and stuff set up, then you'd be good. But these days, things have got so competitive and saturated that you really need to be nearly almost with your messaging, with your strategy, with your structure, and everything kind of fine-tuned for it to be working. Yes, again, you could get lucky and do well short term, but in order for continue doing well by month 3, 4, 5, 6, you have to continue doing well. Any thoughts about that?
Well, you said another thing that I think is so overlooked, but the messaging and the creative matters so much more than people give it credit for. People tend to think like, well, I've got to, get my targeting settings right, but the creative makes all the difference. And we found this to be true cross-channel. But if you spend more time understanding like the why people should hire you answers, and then work that into your creative. And then of course, the other big piece that we talked about this earlier, but like test it, right? It's like, just because you think this, or maybe you did some basic research, or maybe you did some competitive research, is that ad actually working? Another person that's been on my radar recently, I don't know if you're following him closely or not, but Alex Hormozi, he talks about 20,000. He's like, I wouldn't even go into market without 20,000 ad variations. Now, again, I say that and people are like, oh, we can't do 20,000. Even if you're not, some people, they don't like, the gym type of thing, but he does a great job of making the information very accessible. I really like all of his stuff. And the creative and the testing is so important. You're at a huge disadvantage if you've got one ad creative and you're never testing it, and then you're going to conclude the stuff doesn't work, and then you're like, I don't understand. And we see that happen all the time.
Do you guys make landing pages? And then what's your system for creating good optimized landing pages?
Yeah, we've used a bunch of different platforms. We've had success with Lightboard. I think they're currently building on Instapage, but they're constantly testing and changing the different platforms. But the thing that for me on landing pages is it goes back to that same thing that people don't like. There are landing page best practices, and there's things you can test that you'll know, like this will work better than this, like most of the time for this particular situation. But the messaging for the firm, like that's the thing that's so important. And so you can do great and not even have best practice landing pages. Like I'll tell you, right, you probably see this all the time too, but there are some big lead gen buyers in legal that are buying Facebook media, and their landing page, you look at it and you're just like, there's no way this is working, and it's working. And so I think that's another point too, is that what you think might be working or not working, let the numbers tell you, let the conversions tell you, get the feedback from the users. Like don't make it like my landing page looks pretty and I spent all this money to make it look like the way I want it to look. Who cares?
If anything, I think when it comes to conversion, it's very counterintuitive. As you said, a lot of times we try to make it the nicest looking, and usually the nicest looking is not necessarily the highest converting. And then there's like a funny line that ugly converts, right? Let's go to how can I rank in Google's search generative experience?
Number one, I think it's important for people to realize like SGE is only an experimental phase through the end of the year. I think a lot of us believe that they're going to launch it into the wild starting in 24. And I would start with same thing I would talk about in SEO. Go try to understand what SGE, where they're sourcing their data to serve those results. But from my limited research on this so far, it's a lot of the directory sites. They're using the directory sites. Moz, you can check out, Moz had a big study on this, and they said like, I think it was like 60% or 40%, I might be inverting those, of the time it actually mimics what's in the current local pack. And so some of it's going to be the traditional local pack signals. Some of it's, I think, going to be the underlying structured data that they're pulling from like the directories and stuff. And some of it, I think, too, because again, remember, if you think about what these LLMs are doing, they're just guessing based on the prompt or the query in this case, what they think is the most likely thing to come next. And so brands tend to do pretty well here because there's a lot of people that are actually searching and clicking on brand queries. That's why a lot of these bigger legal brands also tend to do better when they come into a new market, because they already have people are searching on the brand and people are clicking on the brand because they've seen the offline media. But so it's a hard question to answer because again, it depends on kind of where you are, what your practice area is, what's your visibility right now. But I would still continue to focus on get the word out, get the machines knowing about who you are. Are you listed on Wikipedia? Are you listed in these directories? Are you publishing on these sites? And then understand where they're sourcing that data. It's the best I can tell you.
I found, Guy, that people are like stingy with their posts. Like, should I post this? Should I not? I'm like, who cares? Post. What do you got to lose? And I feel like a lot of people don't, because they're like looking to get at least a certain number of likes or comments and engagement. If they don't, then I guess they get butthurt about it, and then people, they don't like it.
All I would say is like, yeah, that's great. You just learned something, right? That whatever you posted, maybe try something different. But yeah, I'm with you. And people ask me like, what platforms do you post on? I'm like, look, again, resource dependent, but in a resource limitless world, post everywhere, right? I mean, what do you have to lose?
It's literally free. You got nothing to lose, nothing to gain. And there's also hidden engagement that there's a lot of people don't talk about. Just because it doesn't get likes and comments doesn't mean it's not watched and consumed and actually gets what it's supposed to do. And it takes
absolutely.
And it's not just like one content and you just create one content and all of a sudden people are going to come message you, hey, can you hire me? It's that consistent attitude over long term that leads to the result that you're seeking for.
Absolutely.
And that's the game you're playing, right, Guy? Just a super long-term game, zero feelings towards anything short-term. But that kind of attitude really brings the results that we know and expect. And even if we don't expect, this is it.
Yeah, no, again, I mean, that's the funny thing I tell people too, because it's like people are like, oh, that's boring. There's no like magic or silver bullets here. And I'm like, it's like, think bigger, think long-term, think about what you're putting out into the world, and the world will give you back if they like what you're putting out.